Hello, this is Simon Agdestein. I've become a little bit famous lately as Magnus Carlsen's first coach. I started training him when he was 9 years old, and it has been a fantastic adventure. And chess in Norway these days is just fantastic. It's on television, and Magnus Carlsen has become a big hero in Norway and everything. So it's just fantastic being a chess player in Norway these days. I'm asked to record a video here, and I've chosen the topic tactics. Tactics is everything, as they say. Or as Savielli Tartakover said, tactics is what you do when there's something to do. Strategy is what you do when there's nothing to do. So that cannot be taken literally, but it's not that simple. But you certainly have to be careful in tactical position. One careless movement with your hand and it may be all over. And that's what I noticed also back in my younger days, that the main difference between IMs and GMs, for instance, was their ability to calculate lines. It was a noticeable difference, I thought. These days I don't notice any such things, but I did before, I felt. It's become more tactics with the computer too. So in general, tactics has become much more important than principles, as John Watson explained us in his fantastic book, Secrets of Modern Chess Strategy. What works in practice, what works in real life is what matters, not general principles. I've selected 3 games, my own games. It's easier to show them. It was really interesting games, I thought. The 2 first were from London Classics, the rapid tournament there, the first one. There were different sorts of tournaments there. It was a fantastic open rapid with the best players in the world. And Hikaru Nakamura won with 9.5 out of 10. Fantastic score. He beat players like Michael Adams, Anish Giri, Fabian Caruana, and Vishy Anand. A fantastic score. He even won in the second round. He blundered a whole piece against just a pawn and he still won. And that comes from his fantastic tactical skills, of course. Because I'm not sure, but it seems like his positional play sometimes looks a bit strange. But when he's so strong in the tactical aspect of the game, that's what works. So tactics is important. As I've been coaching Magnus before, I thought next time I'll see him, I'll ask him a couple of questions from these games, because I wonder, would he see the things that I did not see, especially in the second game? I will start with the first one. I think he will see, I have a few questions here. So I will ask you questions during the session. And if you want to try to solve the questions, then you must be ready to actually switch off or push the stop button on the video and think a little and then return. Because that's the challenge here, to see if you can manage to see the things. I'll start with this position. I was black, and the pieces are a little bit loose. The knight on c4 is a little bit loose, and the pawn on f5. I quickly played rook c8, and I thought he cannot take the pawn on f5. I actually thought that, I must admit. But was that true? Can he take on f5? So, if you want to try to see what happens on rook takes f5, is it possible, is the question. You can turn off your computer if you want and try to solve it. I give you some seconds. And for those who don't want to try, he could take on f5 actually. I thought it wasn't possible because of knight d6. And I thought, okay, I'm threatening both the queen and the rook. And if he takes, just to get some pieces, he won't get enough because I win back one of the rooks. But I overlooked something. What did I overlook? I overlooked rook e5. I actually saw it when he took on f5. I saw it the moment I put my rook on c8. I saw he could throw in rook e5 here. And here I saw I could take this one. And if he takes on e7, I just managed to find my way around here. Can do it like this. And I'm not better here, that's for sure. Black is not better. So I did play queen f6. I just thought the rook on e5 could be a little bit loose or strangely placed. So the game went on like this. I took on c1. He took with the queen. It was possible to take with the knight. He took with this one. It was possible to take here. The position is quite tricky. If you just have a look at, for instance, I thought maybe I could win something with a knight coming to f7 next. But it's not so simple because he actually has knight b8, which is possible to follow the threatening knight d7. It's also possible actually just to go knight b4, knight e7, knight c6, and it's actually not hanging on e5. So it was possible to take with a knight on c1, but you took with the queen, which is perhaps the most natural. It's more dynamic, with a knight coming to c3 next. So I played bishop c4, knight c3, and it's loose on e4, and I saw queen f2 check, king h1, and going for the rook. And here, well, I won't pose this as a question because I will just show you this one. You can take here. It's all tactics. Take. And bishop d5. And I will win an exchange. You get 2 pawns, but this knight on a6 is so misplaced, so it's not enough. So that was okay. So after knight f7, he played rook e7. I followed up with knight g5. And here comes my first question. You can turn off and try to see it. Tried it on John Tantisto, former American GM. Now he's been living in Norway for the last 25 years. He didn't quite see what was happening on knight e4. You can try to see it on your own by switching off or turning the stop button and returning after finding what happens. Or you can just see me watching what happens. Because it wasn't that difficult, I just take this one. It was just to take. Because after here, I have this move. So that was fairly simple. So instead, he played knight b4, returning with the knight. And I played knight f3. And now it becomes a little bit tricky. This is perhaps a moment I can start asking Magnus the question, what happens if he takes on e4? So that's the question I will ask him next time I see him. What happens after knight takes e4? You can try to solve it too. I give you some seconds. Or you can just see what happened. I took back. And here there are 2 moves. He did take on e4 with a rook. That has to be seen. What happens then? But what happens on queen takes c4? Queen f1. That was what I spent some time on this actually. Queen f1. It's quite tricky because it looks like queen takes g3 is just winning. But it isn't, because he can play queen takes f3. And I have problems with my back rank, so I cannot take with rook. I have perpetual like this. He cannot go to f1, because then I take on f3 with check. But there's nothing more than perpetual. And if I try queen e1 check, he actually has bishop f1. And here, it's still tricky, because what happens on king g8? It's only one move, and that's knight d3. But that actually solves the situation. But it's very, very close. So knight d3 is essential, actually. If it hadn't been for that, this would be working. So I spent some time on this. This was a rapid game, so we had 25 minutes for the whole game, plus 10 seconds. But it was when I discovered that I simply could take here, that I thought, okay, everything is fine. Actually, I didn't quite see what happened on this, I must admit. I thought maybe I should take on g3 and take on e7, but then eventually I discovered that this is as simple as just checking on f2 and just take here, and it's a mating attack. So it was actually working. I worked it all out fine. So this, I was quite happy with it. And he saw it too. He said he saw lots of threats, but he didn't see the final threat. He did take on e4 instead. And here, if you want to, I can ask you, can you see the final little combination here? It's black to move, winning. I'll give you some seconds. Well, it's knight e1. It works fine. He took my bishop. And here he quickly played queen a2, which is not good, but it doesn't help. It's mate anyway. If he goes bishop h3, I'll just play knight f3 and it's mate on h2 or g1. But he played queen a2. And now it's very simple. I'm sure you all see this. Queen f1. And he resigned. It's mate after this. So this worked out fine. I saw everything. I was quite happy with this one. The next game against Luke McShane, I saw nothing. It was horrible. But that was not so strange because that was really difficult to find all the moves there. Here's the next game. I'm black against Luke McShane. He didn't play so well in the opening, but he played very well in the middle game. He's a good player. I played queen f7. And if it had been in the good old Soviet Union, I don't know, but we had Mark Dvoretsky visiting us in Norway once, and the training session there was really special because he put up a position. It could have been this position, and he just let us think. First, let us think for 10 minutes or something. Just thought, and he said nothing. Then we said what we thought, and then he just said, now you can look at the same position, and then you can think half an hour. And that's what we did. We looked half an hour on the same position. He said nothing. And he said what we had found after another half an hour of thinking. And then he just said, now you can think on the same position for a whole hour. So that meant we spent almost 2 hours just sitting there thinking on the same position. So this is the kind of position where we can actually think for, I could let you think for an hour here. Or I can simply ask Magnus Carlsen, do you, Magnus, see what happens? Can he take on d4 is the big question. So you can either spend an hour on this or 2, or we can maybe proceed a little bit because that's the real difficult one, to see everything from this position. He did took with a pawn. It was actually possible to take with the knight 2, because after here it will hang on f5 in the end. So it was possible, but after this, it will be just as in the game. So it doesn't really matter. He did take with the pawn. I took back with knight. And here, the things I didn't see pops up all in every move. First of all, I didn't see what happens on knight takes d4. Maybe you want to try? I can give you some seconds. You can turn off the video and see what is black's best move here. Or you can just let me show you, because it's rook d8. I didn't see that, I must admit. I was focused on things on taking on e2 and focusing on things like happening down to f2. But rook d8 simply wins, actually. Because after knight takes c6, there's this motive. Didn't see that, and he didn't give me a chance to do it either because he took here first. Took back, of course. And here he took on d8, which is quite natural. He could have taken here. Once again, so I thought it was just to take here, and this was what I thought. I thought, okay, I'll win back the piece. I'll win a piece, I thought. But then suddenly there is the move queen b5. I hadn't seen that one. And here I can't take on d4. I can't play this. and I will have enough for a draw, because he has to protect on e1, and I will win back one of his queenside pawns. But if I want to be funny, I could actually play queen e4, and that would really pose him some challenges, especially in a rapid game, because here he would have had to found, well, it's not simple, because after, for instance, knight f3, I have knight d4, and he has problems. But it was possible to play queen e2. It's really cute. That defends white's position, because after here, we get the same thing. It's a draw. I have enough for a draw. So it was okay. I haven't seen anything of this, of course, but it's also possible. There's also a quite tricky line after bishop c3. I thought bishop c5. But what about queen f3 then? Then it turns out that I can actually play queen a2, and thanks to back rank motives, I have enough. I'm saved here. So it's a really tricky position. Didn't give him a chance to play this either, because he took on e8 instead. And now he took on d4. And here, this is the position. Here you can really think, and you can think for quite a while too. So here's the chance to stop your video and see, can you find black's best move here? There are lots of motives. Well, if you're really, really clever, you would have found queen d8. I didn't find it. And who would? Such a hard move to find, because there are so many motives with taking on h2, followed by queen e5 check, and taking on d4. I didn't see that it was quite working, because well, the bishop is stronger than the knight. There are motives on the back rank. There are all kinds of motives. He thought I would play knight b4. He thought that was the best move. But queen d8 actually wins. It wins, actually. It's nothing he can do. He cannot move this one because of bishop takes h2. Cannot take because of bishop takes h2. And if anything, there's the pin, and that just wins. It just wins for black. So I didn't see that. Instead, I played knight e5. I thought, okay, just throw in the pieces into the center and try perhaps to win the pawn on a4. He protected that one. I was just pointing the pieces towards his king. And here I was quite happy, because I could take on a4. And if he takes on e5, you check, and I will fall, and it will fall on d4. I'm saved. Instead, he played h3. Get some air. I played bishop d6. He played f4. And now we were having very little time. It was down to our last 10 seconds. We had only 10 seconds on each move here. And I blitzed out queen d3 and was very, very happy. I thought, okay, cool. Maybe I have winning chances. But he thought for a while he had a little bit more time. And he found a very clever move here. And I'll give you a chance to try to find it. So white to move to find a good move. It's not necessarily winning, but it's a very good move. Especially when black is in time trouble. So switch off your video, try to find the move, and return. Did you find queen f5? It wasn't that simple to find that one. I didn't see it at all. So queen f5 came. I had 10 seconds to find a move. Came as a complete surprise, queen f5. So again, you can I can give you 10 seconds to switch off your video and think for 10 seconds and try to find the move. I managed the first challenge. I managed to find queen e3, because if it takes on e5, I'll take back and it will be hanging on d4. But the problem was that it just blitzed out queen knight c2, which came as a complete shock for me. I hadn't seen that at all, of course not. And now there was another 10 seconds left to think. I thought, is that possible? I thought it wasn't just knight f3 winning. But it isn't. So, what shall black do here? Is the next question. Another 10 seconds to think. Turn off and think for 10 seconds and try to find it. I managed this challenge too. I managed to find queen f2, because queen f3, knight f3, actually leads to nothing. All of his pieces are protected, and I will just take my knight next move, or maybe even worse, mate me. So that wasn't working, but I managed to find queen f2, which was quite cute, I thought, because, okay, it's hanging on e5, but he can't take with the pawn for sure. He took with the bishop, and I thought, okay, if he takes with the bishop, with the queen, I can take this one. That's what I saw. Actually, this is perhaps white's best chance, and go for this queen ending. He has a pawn more, maybe he can win this. But he played what was natural. He thought he had tricked me. He played queen c8, king h7. He took this piece, and he had protected this one. And I had a little time left, but the thing was that I was getting 10 seconds each move. So now I didn't have so little time left, actually. But for somehow my brain had stopped working and just blitzed out the moves, continued blitzing out the moves. So I thought I would have to go for perpetual. I played this. I played very silly. I played queen d2. I was trying to go for perpetual. But if I had seen queen f4, he has to go to the line. I've just taken e5. If for instance this, I'm just taking a b2. That would have been the logical end of the game. Not the end, because I would still fight a little bit, but I should be out of danger here. I can even try to trade queens if he gives me a chance to, because I think I'm out of danger of losing. So this is what I should have played. Instead, I gave a check here, went for the perpetual, which was not there. And he played very clever, running up with his king. That's what you're supposed to do in queen endings. And I lost on time, but it's completely lost now. So here I didn't see anything. It was quite disappointing. But the thing is that I didn't see anything in the next example either. I will show you that one too. The last one was played a week later in a tournament back home in Norway. The week after, I had this position with white against Lars Oskar Hauge. It's a very promising junior player from Norway, 2300 something, 16 years old. I thought I had something going in the D line, the pin. He played rook d8, and I played, now I have him, I thought c4. And I saw cute lines like knight e7, queen f4. That's a nice pin. And if he takes here, my rook is protected on d1. So that was smart, I thought. So I was calculating a lot here. I thought you had to play this. And I was looking at queen takes d8, check, something like this. And I was wondering who was better here. It's not so clear, actually. But that would have been the natural follow-up. But instead, he suddenly played knight e3. Was that possible? I hadn't seen that at all. So here I took on d8. Could I have taken on e3 is the question. Last question. You can turn off the video and think for a while and say yes or no. Can I take on e3? Would it have been good? And the answer is yes. I didn't see it. It's quite embarrassing, perhaps. That just thought queen d6. Am I not having problems here, I thought? I can simply play this. It pointed out after the game. And he cannot take here because then I take his rook. So it just resigns in this position, actually. I didn't see it. And that's the problem of getting old or something. I don't know. I'm still a grandmaster, but it's something with my calculating skills. Sometimes the brain works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's very, very important. Train your brain for sure. So training tactical skills is very important. So go on and train your head. That's my advice.